Seek information only from trusted sources and take practical steps to prepare your plans and protect yourself and loved ones. Need help and support? Please contact us at the hotline 311 Psychosocial Support at 722-6575 or 518-4157. Brought to you by PAHO, the OACS Commission, and UNICEF.
The opinions expressed on this TV program by the host, co-host, guest, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of UTV or its affiliates.
Hello and welcome. It is Friday and this is the Revolution. It is Friday the 5th of March 2021. I do want to send, although I do greetings on a Thursday, I do want to send a couple of birthday greetings. Birthday greetings going out to Walter Francois. Boy, the work that you did with the Soufre Foundation, all I can tell you is it's sad to see what it has become. The ATM for the UWP, something to prop up Danley LeBon so he can get his parking spot while they vegle all of the people to make them believe that they can destroy and dig out the back of Gopito and present the front and have young people doing puff piece PR over it, and that's going to save us when it comes to World Heritage Site status. But do have a great day, Mr. Walter Francois, son of Soufre. Advanced birthday greetings going out to Delma Duplessis, whose birthday is tomorrow, March 6th. These greetings coming from your parents and all your siblings, wishing you a great birthday with many, 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 many more to come. To the folks who wonder what's happening over at Marjorie's, yes, they are literally demarcating and blocking off the beach. For anybody that doesn't believe me, please try to go to Casabar Beach now and see if you can get all the way to the end. On the left side going up from Marjorie's, you will no longer have access. We gave Cabot $30 million of our pension money for them to destroy our assets and for them to kick us off of our own land. So another beach gone, another part of St. Lucia, another what's left, the Kakada, we cannot even get. And what's even worse is that they've dug up another set of artifacts and they just chuck them on the side. So you know, if you're going to exhume artifacts, you need to have the site preserved so that you can get the proper story. If you have two skeletons, one next to the other, if it's a husband and wife that may have died in holding hands or whatever it is, that type of a thing, and instead they're just digging up stuff, bones, pottery, everything, and just chuck it on the side, and they say they'll present it to the National Trust, totally out of the context in which that ancient burial ground was, and heritage tourism, sustainable tourism, lost again. I also want to send our birthday greetings to Kwabena Bastien. BNN, the news network of the new CDC buildings. To all those in the CDC, new CDC buildings, all those anywhere in Castries, if you go to Ben right now, his birthday, he is buying drinks, and especially since he had time to save in all the time that alcohol was on lockdown, he saved his money and he said if anybody comes and is wishing him happy birthday, he's buying them drinks at any of the bars that are downstairs of the old CDC buildings, anywhere there, just talk to him. Kwabena Bastien, happy birthday to you. And last but not least, Rohan Rooks Lubor, the principal of the Leon Hess Secondary School, dynamic principal, very involved, very engaged. And I must tell you two things. One, something I write with Daman because mate not aging. We are about the same age, and look at me. I look like I've been chasing parked cars, and this guy looks like he's 19. It's ridiculous. And the other thing too, I must tell you, I did not know it was that you shared the same birthday as Ben. And for that, my condolences. I'm sure you could have, if you could have found a way to have him be born on any other day, that you probably would. So where do we start? Well, folks, let's start with the PR.
Sasne pull up in the yard, boy.
Pull up in the yard, boy.
Sasne pull up there.
Take a joke up. Yeah. Now me say cheese.
Yeah.
Cheese for the camera. Right.
Yeah.
Alright.
Sasne pull up in the yard,
Shas
boy.
pull up in the yard, boy.
Sasne pull up there.
Take a joke up. Yeah. Now me say cheese.
Yeah.
Cheese for the camera. Right.
Yeah.
Alright.
Sadly, the reality is that as we go into this election cycle, the same Prime Minister who literally traveled for over a year before he would even visit Victoria Hospital and also St. Jude's Hospital, literally an entire year, he would not go to those places, but he reached Dubai, he reached Guyana, he reached Miami, he reached Canada, he reached all over the world, man. Switzerland, you name it. He went to Malaysia, everywhere, but in terms of seeing what was happening on the ground in our healthcare system, he never had time. But right now, he have time to go for every injection that goes on, and you realize it's all about the PR. Because somebody said something to me, and it stuck with me, that for the way that St. Lucians have been psychologically programmed now, and in fact the world when it comes to social media, nobody really is going to remember anything that has happened beyond the last 3 months. So here is somebody in the middle of reinventing himself in a fake way, but the point is that they will spin it, they will give it to you gobbledygook, as if he's this great leader going all over the country because there's vaccinations and everything going on. And it's all political. Now, sadly, whether you like it or not, the fact is that the opposition in many ways has no choice but to go along with it, because even if it's political, it also happens to be the right thing to do.
Members of Parliament received the COVID-19 vaccine on Thursday inside the House of Assembly, following much talk about the optics of the opposition leader not having taken the jab when the vaccines were initially rolled out on the 17th of February. Philip J. Pierre has clarified his stance and has reiterated his support for vaccination.
I always said that I would have got vaccinated when the first responders, the people who are directly in the front line in fighting the COVID-19. I thought it was the right thing to do, it was the caring thing to do for them to get vaccinated first. I'm satisfied with the arrival of the 20-odd thousand doses from India, is that the first responders would have already been vaccinated. So that is the reason why I've taken it now. But it's always my intention to take it, and I want to encourage all St. Lucians to take it, because in the fight against COVID, we have to follow the science, and the science says that the vaccination is a means where we can protect ourselves and mitigate against the effects of this dreaded virus. I want to encourage all St. Lucians to follow. I want to say to the people who are most vulnerable to ensure that they follow the science and get vaccinated.
The opposition leader says the process was hassle-free and the pain from the jab very minor. He underscores that the benefits far outweigh the drawbacks in such a case.
Well, it was okay. I mean, it's basically when you get like a jab from a needle, but the discomfort was very, very minimal. But if that discomfort means that I could get some level of protection, I think it's worth it, and everybody should do.
Meanwhile, the Speaker of the House of Assembly, Andy Daniels, says he hopes the activity sends a powerful message to the general public.
As Speaker of the House of Assembly, as one of the leaders in St. Lucia, we must all lead by example. We must take the first step so that the people, the nation, will follow. And it is very important that us, the leaders of St. Lucia, take that step to show St. Lucia that it is in the best interest to be vaccinated.
The members of Parliament say there should be no reason for fear on the part of the public and urged everyone to get on the vaccination train.
Now I say it again, all right, when it comes to what Philip J. Pierre did originally, I agree with him totally, and I would have done the exact same thing. Whether you think that discredits him or it discredits me, it's up to you. If you have that you get and you do not have any vaccines on island and you get 3,000 doses of which you have to give each person 2, that breaks it down to 1,500 doses. You have 1,200 police officers, not even counting the COVID wardens. You have over 400 nurses. We're not even counting how many doctors we have. We're not counting how many personnel that we have on the airports and seaports with SLASPA and so on, Hugh and Nora, VG Airport and so on. We're not counting the amount of orderlies and so on, janitors that all work in the various health facilities, health centers and so on. We're not even talking about all of these first responders and the firemen and all of those people, which could easily number, and if you have to add the public service on the whole, because again, these people are public servants. Public service is to like 12,000 people. So you get 1,500 doses, and all of the advice from PAHO, from World Health Organization, even the Ministry of Health is telling you that the strategy has to be to go for an inoculate, vaccinate the first responders first, so that if they need their health protected, to be able to help you protect yours. And for those who are literally in healthcare facilities like the respiratory clinic, you want them to have healthy people treating them. It only makes sense. Now you get 25,000 doses. And by that, if you give the 2 to 1 person each, then that works out to about 12,000, right? About 12,500 doses, 12,500 people that can get it. Which if you say you want to get the first 20% of the population, you will not get the first 20% of a population of between 170 and 180,000, but it's a good start. Now, having said all of that, both of these are donations. So it means that it's a fluid situation where there's a certain amount of negotiation, a certain amount of luck, a certain amount of benevolence on the part of Barbados, Dominica, and of course India. But that said, it's not exactly bankable. When you hear vaccines come in today, they might come 3 days later, they might come a week later. Or like with what happened, as the Prime Minister alluded to, when it came to the ventilators. Imagine Mia Motley had 30 ventilators in the middle of the pandemic, booked everything, transferring the money. China came and bought them out. You know who had to go and get ventilators? Rihanna was in California, had to go to where the ventilators are being produced and pay the people one time to get ventilators to help Mia Motley. Who do we have? I guess we'll send Tedderson John. No, it didn't work out that way. So right now, when it comes to vaccines, let us not become complacent and pretend that, oh, well, now COVID is done. We have vaccines coming through. But you see, again, the politics leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth, because by right, parliamentarians should get the vaccine. In the first instance, if the leader of the opposition is not absolutely essential, then I don't have a problem with him not taking the vaccine. In this round, if he didn't take it, I would have been like, well, to me now, you should take it. But he did choose to take it. It's not like I spoke to him about what his decision was going to be any which way, but that's not the point. The point is, let's look at the first meme. And they were waiting, right? Oh, yes. Now, you see, that's the beauty of Chasney. Chasney, as the Prime Minister, has plausible deniability of not being involved in any of these things. But as the leader of the United Workers' Party, he sanctions all of it. And all the members of the UWP cabinet sanction all of these things. Now, if that put a bad taste in Labour Party, some Labour Party people's mind as to go in and take the vaccine or whatever, and you're trying to encourage people, okay. But what is actually a bit startling to me and somewhat pathetic was the fact that, people couldn't see how it was photoshopped or what was photoshopped or any of that. And I guess it's something, maybe because I do media work, I can tell the difference. But here's the original photo, right? And simple photo, there you go. Let's come back to me first though, right? Because in all of that, you notice, and every time it comes down, there's always misdirection. And while all the PR and emphasis is on everybody getting vaccinated, recognize that the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association put out a document. Well, it was leaked, but it was very, very urgent. It was almost scary what they were talking about, that within a month we could have 6,000 cases and 90 deaths. 6,000 cases and 90 deaths. And people like Brainwash Charlie, right? Samuel L. Jackson from Django, right? That guy. Charlie said, well, no, that could never happen. But let's look at the latest cases. Let's put that meme up now. And look at the bottom. And let's zoom in on the bottom. 43 deaths. And we still have 2 to 3 weeks to go. So the truth of the matter is, the same thing that the Prime Minister called in on, out goes in the Prime Minister and Guy Joseph's talk show, right? To call in to say that the numbers and the projections that the SLMD was given are wrong. They literally, sadly, are spot on. That really and truly, at 45 would be halfway. We have half the time left, 2 to 3 weeks left, and we sadly are up to 43 deaths right now. As of 4th of March, that's yesterday, 43 deaths. And just a week ago, what? We were at like 20-something, 30-something. Here we are, 43 deaths. So let's come on for that. And I want people to understand now that, you know, there was even one story on CNN and even on the BBC about somebody that was trying to get vaccinated. They were waiting to get vaccinated. And while the gentleman was trying to get vaccinated, his wife got vaccinated, and he was waiting, and he was set to be vaccinated, and he got COVID and he died. And then just keep that in mind as you watch this.
25,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine created in India has been deployed in St. Lucia as part of the Ministry of Health's vaccination campaign to achieve herd immunity against COVID-19. On Thursday, March 4th, 2021, prominent personalities from the length and breadth of the island gathered at the Finance Administrative Center to be part of the inoculation process. Individuals from various industries like broadcast media, faith-based organizations, and the legal fraternity all joined in to play their part in leading by example. President of the OECS Bar Association, Thaddeus Antoine, notes his level of anticipation to take the shot.
From day one, even before the vaccine came out and people were saying about the vaccines going to be made, I believe in science. I believe in facts. And from day one I said I would take the vaccine. But funny enough, a few days ago when I was told I'm going to take it today, I got nervous. But that just shows you we are human. And you will have doubts. But I want to say to people, trust the science, trust the facts.
Other noteworthy individuals who received their vaccines on Thursday were editor at NBC, Jade Brown, lead anchor at DBS, Timothy Polio, and owners of Helen Television System, Mr. and Mrs. Linford and Valerie Albert Favrier.
The idea is that the sooner that we can get as many people as possible vaccinated, the sooner we can open our economy to mass crowd events. Those who enjoy carnival, those who enjoy jazz, roots and soul, Creole Heritage Month, all of these things, we have to be able to understand, unless you do not vaccinate, get to that herd community level, we will not be able to have these events.
The business and financial communities were also present. Star publisher Rick Wayne says despite his misgivings, he decided to follow the science.
I had every apprehension in the world, and that comes from too much information, because you don't know which information is to be trusted. And even somebody like myself, I was very, very confused. And I was very close to saying, I've lived this long enough, I don't need to take any chances. My son convinced me how stupid that was, and I'm glad I'm here.
He urges St. Lucians to follow data-driven evidence.
People place greater faith in any bush medicine. I'm not putting down bush medicine, but you've got to know what you're doing with bush medicine. The people who made use of bush medicine in the old days had nothing else, so they learned how to use bush medicine, how to put good bush medicine to good use, and we have no way of knowing how many people died of bush medicine. I'm not putting down bush medicine. I'm just saying we have to put it along the science, where a lot of tests have gone on to establish the efficacy of the vaccine.
The purpose of the highly publicized event was to use the influence of these high-profile individuals to persuade the general public to take the life-saving vaccine, which, while not a cure-all, will play a significant role in ending the pandemic.
Phase 1B of the island's COVID-19 vaccination campaign has commenced. It focuses on people who are 65 years and older, residents of elderly homes, and people living with chronic health conditions. It focuses on people who are 65 years and older, residents of elderly homes, and people living with chronic health conditions.
So, what do you think, folks? I can only tell you what I think based on what I know. First of all, you've just heard this. This is phase 1B. Phase 1B, which means phase 1A, which is to vaccinate our first responders, has been completed, and that's what's been said. Now, that's not true. That's not true. We have never heard of a plan or any PR, especially something that could be disseminated to the families of the police, the doctors, the nurses, the orderlies, all of the rest of the people that had to be vaccinated as first responders. We have not gotten that information at all. What's even worse, I can tell you that no less than 4 doctors, 3 of whom contacted me and I contacted another myself, have told me not only have they not been vaccinated, they have not received any correspondence or any communication from anybody in the Ministry of Health telling them what the plan was for them. Also, I got 3 nurses who WhatsApp me, 2 WhatsApp me, and 1 sent me a message and I called her back. And there you go. So that's the first problem I have, putting the PR ahead. Now, I have no issue with all of the parliamentarians taking the vaccine out of this 25,000 doses or 12,500 if they're taking 2. But then yesterday on Newspin, when was Mary on Newspin? Day before, yes. Mary said that they are giving out the full 25,000, knowing that there's supposed to be a second dose in a couple of weeks, knowing that literally the same pandemic of COVID-19 has caused issues with supply chains and shipping all over the world, and knowing that these first 2 sets of vaccines are not even the ones that were absolutely negotiated. They were donations. So that means all who take in the first vaccine out of this, if what Mary says holds, may well be left stranded a couple of weeks later if anything goes wrong with the supply chain. But I want to come to a bigger point. And first, I want to make sure you understand the term co-opted. So let's go to the meme and let's show what co-opted means, so everybody understands. What does it mean to be co-opted? Co-opted, transitive verb, to choose or to elect as a member or members, co-opted to the committee. B, to appoint as a colleague or assistant, to take into a group such as a faction, a movement, or a culture. Absorb, assimilate. The students are co-opted by a system they serve, even in their struggle against it. Fantastic way of putting it, right? And you see that from Webster's dictionary there. Now, the problem I have here, and I'm saying it whether it is Ezra, Jade Brown, or whoever, it could be Franny, everybody. I want you all to think about this, and I'll make my point to all of y'all. Many of you are colleagues and friends of mine, but I also accept that if you're going to tell people what your truth is, or at least how you see it, that people will get upset at it. Whether it's Jimmy Fletcher, whether it's Yadi, whether it's HTS, whether it's MBC, and so on and so forth. First question, and in fact, no, let me preface that by saying, St. Lucia has a fundamental weakness that Shastney continues to exploit. And that is that St. Lucians never refuse preference when it is in their favor. When it is against them, they scream to high heaven. But when it is in their favor, it's like I asked the question, do St. Lucians really have a problem with corruption? Or do they have a problem when corruption does not include them, if they're not at the trough and if they don't have a sense of the largesse? It's just like some of the UWP hacks. They tell you, oh, Christopher, you're doing all what you're doing so you can just go and get your big government job. Because that's how they see it. They see that they want to turn at a trough and you want to turn at a trough. Folks, you, all of those who were called, contacted to go and take the vaccine because y'all are influencers, I want you to think about this. Phase 1B presupposes that Phase 1A is already done and completed. Considering the time in which they got the vaccines and the rollout, you're basically talking about 3-4 days that 12,000 plus people in the public service, whether they're fire officers or whatever, or nurses or doctors, all got vaccinated. That's one. Two, many of y'all, and let's say we split it 50-50, the Danny Bell is there type hacks, right, and the Rick Wayne type hacks. And then you have the others in the general public that may be apolitical. Y'all know Chasney lies so much. But this time, what is told to you might be convenient to you in the sense that, hey, I get to take a vaccine, I get to take the vaccine, my life, my body press, so fine. And the convenience of that logic will let you listen to drivel like, oh, you're an influencer. Well, think about it. Scotty was an influencer, positively saying that he was going to take the vaccine before he took the vaccine. Why do you need to take the vaccine in order to be an influencer? Iowa was saying just the other day, I listened to Letla before that, he said he'll take the vaccine. Right? There are people, I can tell I'll take the vaccine, but I want my parents to get it first. Not because I'm afraid to take the vaccine, but because if there's a limited amount, I would like to be I would like to go to sleep at night with my conscience telling me that the doses that were coming to me, I made sure there were enough that my mom would get, my father would get, maybe my daughter would get because she has asthma and all that. So that's how I'm thinking. But I guess I'm in the extreme minority because all the popular people are taking the vaccine. But here's my question to you. Because Chasney loves to pit people against each other. It's not a jealousy thing. It's not an envy thing. I just want you to think about that. How many first responders have still not gotten the vaccine? And yet we're giving out, Jimmy will get, and Ezra will get, and this one will get, and that one, and you know. And then what determines, who decided who's an influencer? Who decides who comes from MBC and who comes from Choice? Or who comes from HTS and who comes from RCI or RSL? What was the criteria that they used to select who? Oh, well, that one win road match 10 times, but Invader only won it 5 times. Huh? We'll give it to Pep, but we will not give it. That doesn't make sense. But you see, the part that should have offended all of you, even though the preference was in your favor, was that it had no equity. There's no fairness to the selection process because nobody knows what the selection process was. So then I want you to contrast this. Let's show the next meme. Right? This is what was waiting for Philip J. Pierre. That no matter how Chasney want to pretend to be benevolent, his malevolent mind and malevolent minions, UWP, will always turn it into that Chasney is saving Philip Pierre or this, that, and that. Let's come off of that for a second. So when I speak about being co-opted, let me tell you what's going to happen. So whether it's a Yadi or Jimmy Fletcher, whether it's a this one, that one, the other, right? In any argument that comes in the future, you know what they'll tell you? They'll reproach you because the UWP is an immoral party, an immoral construct. When you're speaking out, they say, you wasn't saying that when you was getting the vaccine, eh? You wasn't saying that when they put you on the VIP list, eh? And again, they will pit you and they will use it to weaken your credibility. Now that's a political argument and you'll tell me this is life or death. So exactly, let's respect the life or death. Respect the science of it. If they tell you the parliamentarians, understood. If they tell you people over 65, Rick Wayne, no problem. Rick is what, 81, 82? The same way if it was Tom Walcott or if it's my father, I would say the same thing. Or anybody that was over 65, fine. But you see, now you all can't say nothing about Timothy Polio going for it because you go and you take it too. And what's the whole thing? That you took it because you're an influencer. You're an influencer when you know in your heart of hearts that you did not need So many things that are advocated for. When people had to come together, let us win this war, people come out and did songs, people did telethons. Some people even tell you up to now, like AG, that they took forever to get paid for doing the telethons. Every time you hear about a telethon, like there's one on Friday, this, that, and the other, is if half of these artists who are in desperate need of money themselves, even getting paid, if they get paid, do they get paid in the full amount? Whether they're doing a telethon for Shasney or for Emma or for whoever. And yet, how do we know? So Umpa is not an influencer, but General Bix is a... How does that work? How does that work? And again, it's a limited supply. It's not like it's just for PR purposes. This is life or death stuff, the stuff we're talking about here. So now, let's show the next meme. Let's show Babono now. Right? This is Babono this morning. And I want to ask, since the health officials tell you that you can actually still get the vaccine and still transmit and carry COVID, are we basically setting up some sort of super spreader? Because I want to encourage people as well to go and get vaccinated. But does that look like something where there's some sort of systemic approach? Can we zoom in on that a little bit? Right? Does that look systemic? Because even if they give numbers, even if they give things, this cannot be right. It cannot be right. Does that look organized to you? Let's show the next one. Does that look organized to you? Let's zoom in on that a little bit as well. And that's this morning. Now here's my point. Here's my point, plain and simple. And we can come off that. I stick to the point about being co-opted. And I'm not telling you do not put your health behind politics. I'm not telling you. I'm telling you, let's think about this. How many of you right now, if you got to find out that you took out of the 12,000 vaccines that were there in practical terms, you found out that for the next month, no more vaccines were coming in. And if you had a mother, a grandmother, an aunt, anybody, an in-law that was in their 60s that didn't get that vaccine and passed away, what you say? You just say and say, well, I'm an influencer, so that makes it all right? I say no. But I'll also tell you something. Shasney is an amoral prick, and he'll tell you straight, he's a pragmatist, and he'll use anything to their advantage. And if you don't believe that, I can see many of you being co-opted, whether you are the worst of the Shasney detractors or the biggest of the supporters. This is an excuse to make sure to prioritize certain parts of the FFF. No problem. They'll say those are influencers as well. Anybody who was over 65, by all means, Rick Wayne and company, go and take the vaccine. These are the internationally prescribed methods for phasing it in. Agreed. The ad hocism, I disagree with. The preference and the bias, I disagree with. No criteria, I disagree with that. And also, first responders still haven't gotten the vaccine. People who want and still haven't even gotten the information or been contacted yet. That's unforgivable, especially with the numbers climbing. But for those who doubt Shasney's ability to take national issues and turn them into political favor and pretend that he cares when it suits him and then don't give a shit when it doesn't, there is history and there is precedent.
We have started moving services from Victoria Hospital to OKEU. We've been able to move the dialysis unit, fully move the entire dialysis unit to OKEU.
That's why I said that St. Jude's is working a bit better because it has its own board. And while it's now almost 100% dependent on the government for its subvention, it at least has an accounting system in where people who are coming in that are covered under insurance is collecting the money. We're not even doing that at Victoria. And so you see things like old pieces of equipment that have not been taken out, basic things that if you were running a business, it wouldn't be there. By the end of 2019, everybody will be insured. Now, why is that important? It's important because, as Mary said, we're moving into OKEU. And I've said to you that the cost of being in OKEU is going to increase the operating cost or the expenditure of government by 70 million. So while we're moving in there under this current regime, government is the one who's carrying that. And those are revenues that we have to find from somewhere in order to be able to pay. And I mean, the Ministry of Health has really been a baptismal by fire since she's gotten in. There are so many areas in which we've had confrontation. And even this issue of moving into OKU, we were repeatedly told that we could not open the dialysis center, that we had to open the hospital in full in order to make that happen, and being told that it wasn't ready.
The dialysis unit at the Owen King EU Hospital will replace the services being offered at the Victoria Hospital. Health officials say it comprises high-end dialysis machines and chairs and will be manned by trained staff, including 17 recently hired nurses. The purpose-built unit provides light, spacious treatment areas for patients. But it's not just about a new home. It is about the opportunities for improved care and for more people to access services. And no one knows that better than patients who have been on dialysis for many years.
This is the same party now in government which claimed that people were dying because of non-commissioning of dialysis machines at the Owen King EU Hospital. 18 months after winning an election, since 2016, the government is now planning to provide dialysis services without the other medical services present at the hospital. Was the government advised by professional medical personnel to operate dialysis machines without the other medical services of the hospital? Who made that decision? And what are the possible consequences if dialysis patients at the Owen King EU Hospital were to develop complications? Would you then rush them by ambulance to Victoria Hospital? Is that consistent with best practice, with best medical practice, or is it driven by political expediency?
Prime Minister Alan Shasley says this is an important milestone in the history of St. Lucia.
For me personally, it's emotional. I swore I wouldn't cry. Or I wouldn't feel or let you see my emotion. But other than the Lord, who is the most important, I want to thank Mary for the amazing job she's been doing as Minister of Health. We were being told from the get-go, can't open up the dialysis center unless you open up the whole hospital. I said, why? I go to other places in the world and I see dialysis units by themselves. The people of this country need the dialysis lab to be open now. And with our perseverance, it still took us a year and a half.
Choice News has received reports that a patient encountered difficulties during Friday's second dialysis shift. Eyewitness reports indicate that the patient became unresponsive during the dialysis procedure and that an ambulance was called to transport the patient to the Victoria Hospital Accident and Emergency Department. The patient has subsequently died. The dialysis unit of the Owen King EU Hospital became operational in January of 2018, with an opening ceremony being held on January 24th. With no functional accident and emergency department on site, concerns were raised at the time that patients encountering dialysis complications may not be able to receive care in a timely manner.
The death of dialysis patient Curtis Marius has prompted the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association to again appeal to the Alan Shasley administration for greater inclusion during the ongoing transition from the Victoria Hospital to the Owen King EU Hospital. Curtis Marius suffered from a dialysis crash while being dialyzed at the Owen King EU Hospital. Dialysis crash is a common but potentially fatal occurrence if the appropriate medical response is not applied. Marius was rushed from OKEU to the Victoria Hospital, where he was pronounced dead.
We're not looking for, what would I call it? We're not looking for a smoking gun here. What we are saying is we have to try and manage the risks involved in doing those things so we can now deliver to the public healthcare delivery that is safe and in an acceptable manner.
The government has initiated a phased approach for opening OKEU. The January transfer of the dialysis unit from the Victoria Hospital to OKEU, however, continues to be under heavy scrutiny from the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association. Medical staff would still need to transfer dialysis patients at OKEU back to Victoria Hospital in the event of medical emergencies. The Medical and Dental Association contends the lack of critical support services at OKEU place current dialysis patients at risk.
From my understanding, there was a three-phase approach. Was dialysis phase 1? It's not reasonable to think dialysis is phase 1. It's like asking to move the ICU as a standalone. What if a patient crashes in ICU and you need to take them to theater? What are you going to do? So you run to Victoria Hospital. That time is of the essence in certain issues. You do not have the luxury of running around. Sometimes you got to make quick decisions, and that's where the life and death issues come in.
The Medical and Dental Association laments what it claims is the government's lack of consultation on the commissioning of OKEU.
We did in fact report on various occasions that the manner in which that transition is being done, one, it is too slow, it's not being done in an efficient manner, and there is interdependency between departments. Some departments require others to function appropriately. So when you're going to make the decision to move certain critical areas, if you do not have the necessary support and backup, if nothing happens, that's fine. But when something happens, then you have a non-conformity in the system that now you have to be rushing to narrow gaps and those sort of things. And that's not what we want, because we're talking life and death issues.
Last night, we heard a consequence of what happened. We heard of a young lady who happens to work as a civil servant. Her name is Leona Phillips, who died last night because she could not get on the dialysis machines. The problem that I am talking about is real. It is personal. I cannot believe that we have to come to public meeting after public meeting to cry and bring forward an issue that can be resolved. So what I would like to do is just have 1 minute of silence for Leona. Amen.
Do you think that people have not died on dialysis previously?
You're watching UTV, TV for you. watching UTV. TV for you.
Who drinking it first? UTV. Who drinking it first? UTV. Yo, this is Hollywood HB. Bigging up UTV. You don't know the baddest and the greatest. UTV underground station. You mad? Rrr.
Welcome back to the Revolution. Now, the consequences of putting in elitists and aspiring elitists like Guy Joseph, like Shastney as an elitist, who can fly their family out on military helicopters, go to India for healthcare, send their spouses to Miami and whatever, outside of the actual pandemic lockdown, the day-to-day realities of St. Lucia's healthcare really doesn't affect them. It's optional at best for them. That said, what about you? What if I told you that if you connect the dots, you'll see that sadly, everything that's been happening with healthcare, even in terms of COVID now, has all been nothing more than interference in what is basic financial equations. That for Shastney and the rest in the cabinet, it's all been about what money they could make, the cheapest way that they could bring in healthcare, no matter the standard or lack thereof, and everything that the public has been clamoring for and in need of has come secondary to ulterior motive and to profit motive. Well, let's play connect the dots. And the first dot that I want you to connect is why this government has always been pursuing privatized healthcare. Very simple. Shastney likes glorious things. He likes childish things. He likes fancy things. Horse race track. He wants to see, he wants to see skyscrapers. He wants to see a causeway. He says very, very exciting. Like, like they say, like a child without toys. But the mundane things like healthcare, which we establish as a human right, those things take money. But people have a feeling, and they're right about that, that you owe them proper health care. So you don't really get credit as much as if you build some big rendering type thing so that you can show people edifices, phallic symbols, that type of a thing. Now when it comes to the whole part about the privatized health care, for anybody that's been sleeping for the last 4 years, I'll walk you through it. But you have to recognize exactly what's going on. And we're going right back to 2017 and we're connecting the dots.
Going to take a lot more money and a lot more time to fix up the current building and make it operational. So on the basis of that, I've now looked at what my alternatives are. And I've reached out to several different people. I've had ideas of my own. My cabinet has had ideas in which I'm hoping that over the next couple of weeks that we can come to some kind of conclusion and make a presentation to the public of St. Lucia on how we're going to move forward. According to the report, that the current design in the building will not be able to deliver that. And that because the building is so spread out, right, from an operational cost perspective. And that's why I went to Cayman. I said, you know what, let me go and see what the difference is for myself. So we went to Cayman, same size, 104 beds. Exactly the same square footage, 100,000 square feet. Had 3 wings, and it had 1 big corridor down the middle. So the entire hospital is accessible internally. Where all the beds are upstairs, there's all pneumatic drops. You know what a pneumatic drop is? There's a tube with the air in it. So when they take a blood sample or they take anything, it goes straight down the pneumatic, straight to the lab. The whole thing is completely interfaced. In terms of where the billing is, in terms of the administrative side, all the support. It's simple. It's simple.
What if I told you that the entire healthcare debacle of St. Jude's under this government, of the West Coast Highway, the East Coast Highway from Babono down, from Debarra down to Louvet, Guy Joseph, CDB, healthcare, Cayman, privatized healthcare are all tied together. Doesn't make sense, does it? But again, we connect the dots. So folks, what if I told you that Guy Joseph learned when he was in the Ministry of Infrastructure just the power in terms of the amount of profit that can come through construction, concrete and steel. Now that said, he also got to know of the international agencies like CDB, which has its own corruption issues. You can just talk to people like Permandu and you can figure it out. That said, Kenny Anthony was one who lobbied in 2015 the British government for funding, and they gave close to £300 million, out of which our allotment, they gave it to CARICOM, our allotment was £40 million, and Kenny Anthony negotiated that. That money was supposed to do a road from Babonneau down to Louvet in Dennery, behind Montego Bay in Dennery, to open up that entire quadrant. The money, £40 million, turns out to be about 140 million EC dollars. And that money was given to CDB from the British so that we could access our portion of the money. Kenny Anthony lost the elections. Guy Joseph comes in as the Prime Minister's Prime Minister, and so does Chasney. And what does Chasney do? For the first time out of all the other countries, they have either their Prime Minister or Minister of Finance on the Board of Governors for CDB. But Guy Joseph ends up being on the Board of Governors. Now you wonder why it is that both Chasney and Guy have the same basic nomenclature for their ministries. One is economic growth, the other is economic development. Others would call that overlap. I would call it Siamese Prime Ministership. So he's on the board of CDB. And what if I said, in my opinion, I think that what they tried to do was to take that money and propose to CDB that they would access that money for them to do a medical training hospital. Guy's wife loves training schools and all the rest of that, right? And they would build that hospital. And then they said no, because CDB will not give you money for that. CDB will only give you money for projects that open up economic zones, ports, bridges, roads, things that open up areas for expansion of your economy in terms of the physical infrastructure. And a school down at St. Jude's would not do that. So then Chasney comes with a brilliant idea, because you know for him everything is tourism. Why not take the old St. Jude's facility, what Stephenson King and Kenny Anthony and so on did, turn it into a medical school. Even Michael Chasney had that idea as well too. No accident there. And build some other building, right, and have it as medical tourism. So you'd have medical tourism and a medical college right there, all in the same general facility. Well, St. Lucians rejected that, and the engineers and all the John Peters and Mark Hennicotts and all, everybody came, architects, and you know, people came and they said, no, you can finish St. Jude's, the existing St. Jude's. But by then, the plan was already hatched. So they stopped St. Jude's. Then they put Dale to do a documentary quoting the same erroneous figures, because none of them knew that Shanta King, who was on the project, had produced an actual handover report. And they came up with all kinds of outlandish figures. Their number one guy, Concreto, that they used to siphon money through to buy elections, because they gave the guy $26 million in the 3 months before elections, and by a month after they had lost the elections, he couldn't pay any of his staff. But that said, the point was that St. Jude's now was stopped for 2.5 years while they came up with this interim report on all of what went wrong with St. Jude's. $980,000 report too, direct award to one of the friends, one of the FFF, FDL. And when they gave it to Lynch and them, even in that report, even though none of the names besides Saint-Ville, who works for Guy and works for the ministry and has his own company getting contracts to Teams Inc., turns around and even in that page 162, they point out that St. Jude's should be completed and finished. And up to now, that report cannot be submitted as a final report, because as soon as it is, it's going to trigger a slew of lawsuits from people like Halcro, who are building the hospital and even won a 2015 award in Oregon for building hospitals, for hospital construction by an engineering society. Instead, we put Fresh Start, who has never built a hospital and only ever built its first road when it did the Chasney Road, by direct award, and aided and abetted by Mangal's Materials, also millions of dollars, $12, $13 million going there, to build this polyclinic box And then if you listen to what Shastny just said there, from 2017, they've been trying to build this box. They know that the box needs to be done, and it cannot be accredited by Accreditation Canada, who should have been in from the beginning, accreditation from the UK, accreditation from the United States. No. Nobody's accrediting the building. It doesn't even have water and electricity and subterranean oxygen and nitrogen underneath it. It doesn't have any of those things. It's not built sequentially as most hospitals are. Instead, it's been done on an ad hoc basis. And who could it support? Well, maybe Cayman's business model is that St. Lucia's population is too small, so they need everybody to come up to the north for major surgeries. And a box, just like what Shastny was talking about, has been forced into the parking lot down in Vieux-Fort. No longer a district hospital, sorry, no longer a general hospital, but reduced to a district hospital.
There's a lot of brouhaha about building a new hospital. And Guy keep talking about a level 4 hospital.
Able to meet the requirements of a level 4 hospital.
We are going to go to a phase 2, which is to build a brand new hospital.
The buildings look like they are good. They are good buildings construction-wise, but not adequately designed to accommodate a level 4 hospital.
Is to still explore all possibilities of a makeshift facility at the existing St. Jude.
I really think that the government is not coming clean with not just the people of the South, but certainly with St. Lucians generally. I think we're transcending into a worse situation. Because I was involved with the planning of the new Victoria, which invariably became known as the National General Hospital, and then was named the OKEU Hospital. It is speaking to a general hospital. It means that this hospital has emergency services and surgical services in there to deal with emergencies. According to the 2006 National Health Reform Plan that was formulated for the reform of the healthcare services in St. Lucia, different types of healthcare facilities have been delineated in that document. And you have what is called health centers or wellness centers. You have district hospitals or polyclinics and general hospitals. A level 4 district hospital or polyclinic is like what you see at Grosile.
Okay, let me stop you here. So a level 4 hospital is a polyclinic?
It is a polyclinic.
It's like what's in Grosile. What about the one in Dennery?
What we expecting in Dennery is a level 4 polyclinic.
So what is the difference because our people need to understand. What is the difference between a level 4 hospital, which is a polyclinic, and a community hospital?
Simply put, one will be able to afford
more services,
and especially surgical.
Good.
Especially surgical.
So then we're saying what existed at St. Jude pre the fire was a community hospital.
A community hospital, a general hospital.
A general hospital.
Yes.
So Guy Joseph, by his own admission, with that level 4, which I suspect he believes is a 4-story building, with that level 4 hospital, is actually downgrading what existed.
Yes, and it will offer minor, according to the reform document, it will offer minor surgery. In fact, let me just read what it says.
Yes, okay, good.
According to the National Health Reform Plan of 2006, and it says 2006 to 2011, I'm not sure it has been revised, a level 4 healthcare facility refers to a polyclinic.
The project will involve the construction of a new wing to incorporate all functions and services of the existing east and surgical wings of the existing facility. Integration through retrofitting of some of the existing buildings to achieve a fully functioning hospital to match the services of a level 4 facility.
You are quoting from a document that was prepared by consultants for St. Lucia.
Absolutely. Level 4 healthcare facility refers to a polyclinic or a district hospital in which the broad services provided include for, but not limited to, dental, laboratory, radiology, minor surgery, physiotherapy, maternal child care, and audiometry. Audiometry is to deal with your hearing.
Yeah, I know.
But this is an extremely large departure, Richard,
from what would have been there,
which was referred to even in your 2008 quadrant plan for the island.
Yes.
A regional hospital for Viewport.
Yes.
Regional. A new polyclinic, district hospital, in what invariably was going to be the green area and car park of the complex, had it been completed. It's removing it from the main facilities, the main infrastructure, so you have now to duplicate all of that for it to be a standalone healthcare facility in a confined space. It is no longer healthcare and recuperation as was provided by St. Jude. It is going to be a fast, almost like a fast throughput of health provision, seemingly like outpatient service. And anything that requires secondary, you have to head up to Victoria until OKEU can get permission.
What I know is how to use money to gain wealth.
But isn't Shastney the one that always talks about how Viewport is the new frontier and they want to develop and put horse race track and all the rest of that and causeway, and they want to build artificial islands, and yet they want to downgrade the healthcare system in the south by taking St. Jude's, no matter how big that warehouse is, they want to take it from a general hospital down to a district hospital, which means any major surgeries must still be done in the north. Exactly to profit who? Well, do you know who Cayman is?
Health City, Cayman Islands on Tuesday. The hospital will accept its first patients on March 10th. Dr. Devi Shetty, the Indian philanthropist and surgeon behind Health City, said his vision is for the Cayman Islands to pioneer a new type of healthcare delivery that will be the textbook for other countries to follow. Addressing an appreciative crowd assembled under tent canopies on the parking lot of the new hospital, Dr. Shetty said the gleaming 140-bed facility in the background is just the beginning. Work is expected to begin later this year on a hotel and residences, while Phase 2 of the project, a 300-bed unit that will expand the hospital's specialties into neurology and oncology, is scheduled to begin in late 2015.
Profit-driven medical tourism. People that don't want to go into primary care like what you get at your health center. Secondary care like what you're supposed to get at, well, you used to get at Victoria Hospital. What is the dominant thing that happens in any country where you have car accidents, where you have minor surgeries, you may have gunshot wounds, knife wounds, all of these types of things. Trauma like a number of vehicles in a car accident or plane crash, God forbid. These are things that fall into secondary care. But that's not where the money is. So Cayman specializes in things like knee replacement, boob jobs, right? Chemotherapy, cancer treatment. Now, yes, we do need cancer treatment here, but again, you will have to pay a hell of a lot of money in order to make these things happen, and their business model is predicated on tertiary care. Tertiary care, the most expensive of health care. Now, in case they say I'm making it up, maybe you haven't been following, let's hear Shastney.
We want to be able to have a final agreement on the structure of healthcare by the end of this year, and that we want to have the new regulations drafted and approved in Parliament before May or June, and then we want to be able to implement the new health insurance and the new processes within healthcare by the end of 2019. And I have to say to you that that's very ambitious. Okay? Very ambitious, but I don't want to I, 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 Every day and every new service that we put into OKEU before the health insurance comes in is at the government's cost. Right? So if in fact we were to fully operationalize OKEU by the end of this year, which is what the intention is that will be on the P&L of the government. Right? And there is no allocation. There's $10 million in the allocation to be able to do that. So it means that automatically that I'm going to have to find extra money from other places. So the quicker we can get the healthcare insurance implemented, then it helps offset some of it, not in total. And I've made it very clear. Health insurance by itself will not cover all of the operating costs of your health services. So we have to find additional revenue streams, and that's why the offer by Healthcare City to be able to upgrade OKU to a tertiary level facility, providing services that we don't have. And the question, and it's a fair question, why them? Why them? The point is that they're doing it. They're doing it in Cayman. You know, one of my ministers was really up in Cayman and met with, the Minister of Health there personally took that person around and showed them what added value that they were generating. And I've said, hopefully, and that we all will start understanding it, is if we now can provide that quality of tertiary level services, it's going to help now with the growth of St. Lucia. Because people who are thinking of using St. Lucia as a secondary home, or the headquarters that we're having in terms of bringing executives here, it becomes more viable for them to want to come to St. Lucia because of having that quality health care.
So you see, high net worth individuals, when you hear people like Alva Baptiste talking about how Chasney wants to turn St. Lucia into a bourgeois enclave, never mind that the European Union gave the largest amount of grant funding in the entire Caribbean for the Kenny Anthony Labour Party project of the OKEU, because of the suffering and the poor people, especially the banana farmers, who were using all kinds of gramazone and stuff like Roundup that was giving us a high prevalence of cancer. That is what created the entire impetus to go and chase down and raise the money and get the grant funding for the OKEU. Here you have Chasney telling you that he wants to turn OKEU into a tertiary facility. So much so that Mary Isaac and them intimated and spoke to moving the secondary care facility for which the hospital was built down to the wellness center. So you turn the equivalent of Golden Hope and Turning Point into the secondary care facility, even though that is what is the majority of what St. Lucia needs, in order to facilitate Cayman's business model. So Cayman wants to be able to do heart bypass, install pacemakers, give you nose jobs, boob jobs, whatever makes money for them on their business model. And at the same time, Guy Joseph is busy taking director awarded money and borrowed money from the Taiwanese to go and build a polyclinic box, downgrading Viewfort's healthcare, so that Cayman can have a farm system of having the healthcare in the south. And once you need proper surgery or anything, you have to come up to the north, like the days of old, days that we thought we had evolved beyond that. Even Stephenson King and Kenny Anthony were outfitting the St. Jude's Hospital in Auger to make sure that they could function independently of each other ever since Hurricane Thomas split the island in two. And you don't have to believe me, just ask Dr. Stephen King, because he was one of the leaders of that initiative. So, where did that leave us before COVID?
The guys are requesting from the government of St. Lucia a grant of $69 million US. Mwen vie di sa en créole. Pour yo commencer déjà yo jamais de gouvernement 69 millions de dollars américains qui ka vini yo 186 millions de dollars à la hand. So that's the first demand. A grant of $186 million. And yes, you heard right, a grant. You heard right. Yeah, a grant of 186 million or 69 million US to get the OKEU operational, open, running. They want the Owen King Hospital empty. They want it empty. Okay. Don't ask me how I know these things. I was at the meeting. I was at the meeting. I was there. I wasn't there, but my spirit was there. They want the OKEU empty. Completely empty. So that all the equipment that Victoria Hospital had already begun transferring to the OKEU, all the dialysis machines, all ALL, all furniture, everything has to be removed so that the Cayman Group is given an empty building. Now, they have indicated that they want Victoria Hospital converted to a polyclinic. Now, you all know what that means. At a polyclinic, there are no beds. La pani kusha polyclinic, se passe yo ka passe ou. No beds. None whatsoever. So if you fall ill and it is necessary that you are admitted, OKEU. The question is, what will happen to our sick people who are currently at Victoria? The guys don't give a damn about that because they owe the St. Lucian public or the electorate no social responsibility. Their involvement is strictly business. They come to make money, and that is all they are interested in. They also want the wellness center. Yeah. Our new wellness center to be converted to a polyclinic. Again, no beds. No beds. The only beds, as a matter of fact, they were there today. They were at the wellness center earlier today. Yes, they were. Yes, they will. In other words, the bargaining position is that the only beds that will be available within the basin should be those within the confines of the OKEU hospital under the control of those foreigners. Under the control of those foreigners. Mind you, they have indicated that they will be employing between 50 and 100 persons. That's what they say. Between 50 and 100, no more. And guess what? Guess what? That 100 does not exclude rather, their own people. The majority of that 100 will be their people. It would therefore mean that very few St. Lucians will work at the Owen King Hospital. The greater majority of workers will be foreigners. By extension, most persons, and this is petrifying, it's scary, but it's reality, most persons who currently work at the Victoria Hospital, most of those 600 employees of the government attached to Victoria Hospital will lose their jobs.
Now, whether you know it or not, St. Lucia's nurses, our St. Lucia nurses are so sought after that they are routinely recruited by the United States, by the UK. There are even business models that are set up here because of the kind of quality, high quality nurses that we have here. Canada, we're always losing nurses to Canada, to the UK, and to the United States. And many of them are so patriotic, it's just to stay with their family, because when they go to work in the United States or Canada or the UK, they make twice, sometimes 3 times the salary that they're making down here, especially in the squalid conditions that they are working in. But in order to make the case for Cayman, Shasney had to first make sure that everybody thought Cayman was superior, when in truth they are really inferior. Just imagine, by Cayman's own investigation, as in the Cayman Islands, they recognize that nurses who work at Cayman facilities are not even qualified to work outside of Cayman facilities in other health institutions in the Cayman Islands. While our nurses, Shasney, was busy talking about them in front of the Chamber of Commerce as if they were leles.
Estimates that have been provided to us through the University of West Indies and that have been collaborated by a private entity is that it would cost us around $70 million to operate OKEU as a replacement to Victoria Hospital. Right? And Victoria Hospital costs about $30 million. So it means that if you make the assumption that you're going to completely shut down Victoria and move all of the services into OKEU, you would still have to come up with an additional $40 million in expenses. That does not also take into consideration that it is a quantum leap in technology that we're proposing to do going from Victoria to OKEU. And who is going to run that and the equipment is a very critical assumption that we have to figure out. Because the worst thing to do is when you have new electronic equipment and you try to experiment with it, it means that the period of free maintenance that you would normally get on brand new equipment could possibly be short-lived. And it means that the $70 million would be even higher.
It is requiring ventilation as soon as they are born or anytime after. Here you could see we have an incubator setting with our new market ventilators, which would provide ventilation for any neonate within the unit. And our timer. Our X-ray box allows us to dim and brighten the lights as we need to. And this timer we use to time procedures. Example, if a mom is bleeding excessively and we need to apply pressure, the doctor would ask us to apply the pressure. The doctor would apply the pressure and ask us to time. And this is one of the racks that will be utilized within the washer disinfector. The instruments will be placed on this, and this part of the rack goes into the machine. The instruments are processed and it comes back out onto the machine for packaging. After washing and disinfection, we go through anything with the child. When this is pressed, an alarm is set. The nurse, wherever she is, would know that a patient is calling. It is not a continuous alarm, but the sound will be made every 6 seconds and it stops. From the staff base, the nurse will see the room, the bed number, but she cannot reset from the staff base. She must come here to the patient and then reset after she have assisted the patient.
And we're very happy to have the additional ventilators. Over here, we have some of our new pumps. We have pumps for feeding, pumps for intravenous therapy. These are not new to us, however, these upgraded versions are a lot less cumbersome than the ones we have at Victoria Hospital. This device down here is one that we're particularly excited about.
So copiously explain mama lani need for additional notes because I'm saying no style come about session and lani need for you wize yo me la yo say I'm say budget la lani passé budget la so whole community of finance party approve so you can serve the opportunity sa pour brighter notre la to arrive. Pour actually you had dépensé $2 million pour payer pour session before by cosa but c'est l'argent you pas ni et puis you pas just dépenser pour payer pour ces sessions là. So en charité contract la habut you pas rendu dans position actuellement pour ça renew contract la puis you pas ni pièce là.
Et combien là on dit 2 millions?
Oui, you have dépensé 2 millions.
But ça a fait right devant Noël là like c'est mon zani from me but what about Monsieur qui joue 31 million?
Moi d'accord pour y aller about 2 million now.
Non, on a parlé 2 million compared pour 31 million pour yon homme. Et 2 million but who does that idea?
So government will pay for all of the salaries of the doctors and the nurses at primary and secondary health care. Wow. That will not be included as part of the insurance cost. Government will pay all of the utility costs. And government will pay for all of the capital costs associated to healthcare in this country.
Can you believe that? Can you believe this, man? You are privatizing the hospital because you cannot find the $52 million necessary to operate the hospital annually. Notwithstanding, you gave away $54 million in VAT collection. But you are telling the people you will pay all of those things, including the salaries of foreigners.
And the public might get some idea of what has been negotiated on their behalf without their knowledge. State into the record who you are and what your role is at the HSA. We're looking at the Auditor General's report where he talked about the Health City deal that was negotiated. And I'm wondering if you have any concerns about the agreement and what effect it could have on the standards of the medical profession in the country.
The exclusivity of the arrangement that is outlined in the contract gives cause for concern.
In fact, if a Caymanian was to avail themselves to the promised training by Health City, they could not work in the wider community even after they got their qualifications there because they could only be licensed to that institution.
That is correct.
So imagine some of the nurses that you even saw in the video demonstrating how the equipment works at the OKEU. Well, we all know how Shasney has treated our nurses. We've lost over 200 of the 440 original complement of nurses and had to recruit more under the Shasney administration. They used the lie that because they were opening up the Millennium Heights Medical Complex and the way the laws were stated, that they would have to fire public servants and nurses and so on and rehire them, which is not true because the Millennium Heights Act provides for public servants to simply be transferred from whether it's VH or whether it's St. Jude's or anywhere to there. But right now, all of you know hundreds of nurses that have to sign contracts, 1 year, 2 year contracts because of Cayman and Shasney promising to pay everything for them. But when it comes to our nurses, when it comes to our healthcare, for the last 3-4 years he is holding out. The European Union gave him a score of 2 on 10 in terms of what they were doing with OKEU. He refused to move into OKEU until, as Mary Isaac and he admitted, COVID forced them to. But don't take my word for it. Listen to Shastny himself.
This is going to be, I know that you just talking about in healthcare insurance, but it seems to me the average, well, not just the average, healthcare is going to cost an arm and a leg for a headache with all these expenses that must be met.
If we continue,
you made a statement like that with reference to the crime lab, and you prove correct that we alone cannot properly operate a crime lab.
But the point is that we're going to open up Owen King. We're going to transition.
You say you hope like next year?
Yes, early next year. But what we will do is we're going to run it as a company initially, and once we get the healthcare insurance in, the idea is to have a PPP and to bring in somebody else to take on the operations. But nobody is going to come in and agree to operate the hospital on the promise that government is going to pay them.
I never ever saw a nurse for my night and 2 days I spent there. I had someone taking coffee in the morning to me, and when she came up there and saw my condition on a bed with all feces and urine.
That was recently?
Recently. I am 92 years of age. And she wrapped me up and said, remove the feces and the urine and throw the sheet one place. So I said, well, it's a day and a night. I have.
In other words, things are bad in the hospital.
Now, Mr. Speaker, almost 3.5 years into this government, and our people are literally dying at our medical institutions, Mr. Speaker. They are dying. And Mr. Speaker, if I had time, I would recount experiences of my constituents, Mr. Speaker. We have seen photos coming out of VH, Mr. Speaker, the conditions that people have to go through, Mr. Speaker. And what the member finds amusing is to boast about the DSH race, Mr. Speaker. I saw the member from Miku South post pictures of the stables and how beautiful and advanced and spacious they are. And I wondered, Mr. Speaker, a short distance away at the George Odland National Stadium, Mr. Speaker, that the horses are enjoying better conditions at DSH, Mr. Speaker, than St. Lucians are enjoying at St. Jude Hospital at the stadium, Mr. Speaker. And you want me to come to a DSH race in December, Mr. Speaker? That's what you want me to do? Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Speaker, I think, Mr. Speaker, is an insult to the people of St. Lucia. Our people are literally dying at our medical institutions, Mr. Speaker. They are dying. And Mr. Speaker, if I had time, I would recount experiences of my constituents, Mr. Speaker. We have seen photos coming out of VH, Mr. Speaker, the conditions that people have to go through, Mr. Speaker. And what the member finds amusing is to boast about the DSH race, Mr. Speaker. I saw the member from Miku South post pictures of the stables and how beautiful and advanced and spacious they are. And I wondered, Mr. Speaker, a short distance away at the George Odland National Stadium, Mr. Speaker, that the horses are enjoying better conditions at DSH, Mr. Speaker, than St. Lucians are enjoying at St. Jude Hospital at the stadium, Mr. Speaker. And you want me to come to a DSH race in December, Mr. Speaker? That's what you want me to do? Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Speaker, I think, Mr. Speaker, is an insult to the people of St. Lucia.
You're very poor. The poor people are suffering. You're suffering. It's not right. It's not right, I'm telling you.
The government that was on the Victoria floor. Sadly, that's not the first time. That doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. The government that was on the Victoria before. Sadly, that's not the first time. That doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. I'm not running away from those issues. But my government, as Sarah said, does not have the latitude of saying we're going to focus on healthcare. So if you take the same people at Victoria and you physically move them to the OKE and you don't change anything, I guarantee you in 6 months, despite being in a nice building, the quality of service is going to be the same. It'll be exactly the same. And so what I've been holding out for is that we have a proper organization structure and that people are interviewed and that we allow them now to go into OKEU. And that wherever their shortfalls are, that we now provide short-term training, medium-term training, and long-term training, so eventually solutions can run OKEU. But that's not going to happen overnight. So we are now working with a company called Cayman Health City. I'm hoping that the contract is going to be signed very soon.
So all the evidence has been there. The stall and the bluff trying to convince you that Cayman was superior when the only thing that they are superior in is making money for themselves, bringing in their own people that are a lower medical training standard than what we already have. But you see, Shasney always comes and tell you, we're building a new solution because we have to admit the old one wasn't working. That's where he catches you. Because every country has its issues. But how did we get so far? Well before Shasney, when we had our Nobel laureates, how did we manage to build this country? And yet Shasney can just say it wasn't working? Yeah, we have problems like everybody else. But think about this, folks. The European Union saw the need for a health facility. And it was intended and it's stated for the general public. They never wanted it privatized. Yet Shasney gave every excuse. Now they're building a big polyclinic box with such a big footprint down in Vieux-Fort that is going to cost even more than OKEU to run. But he was talking about the cost to run Victoria. And then you have to ask yourself, was Victoria turned into a respiratory clinic purely because that was the best place? Or was it a way to, once COVID passes, to snuff out that hospital because Cayman wants no competition in the north? And they want no other hospital in the north, and the south has to have a hospital that is dependent on them and is still a lower end franchise? Because Shasney is essentially KFC in healthcare. Privatize it. He knows he can afford. He knows the people that he cares about can afford. He knows the people who are in league with him. He has given them enough direct awards that they can afford, and they can also fly out. And for you, you have to get health insurance. But not even the white paper has come. When Janica asked him in 2018, what did he do? He snubbed her. He wouldn't even answer her question. There is no health insurance. So when you see Shasney like last night in Canaries, well after curfew, and then you hear Fede in in Ancillary on the waterfront, once again buying drinks, rum for everybody, giving the fishermen yellow rope, right? You have to ask yourself, will St. Lucians remember all of these things? Or will the nice, passionate lies, the righteous indignation of the narcissist win, even though you know the facts?
Leave for the last time, which I doubt will be the case, that there is no intentions on my government's part to privatize OKE. And there never has been. So hopefully, again, I'm on record. I make it publicly known clearly that there is no intentions to be able to privatize OKE. Okay? So this sinister perspective, Mr. Speaker, by members of the opposite side, to look at something that is a simple issue, to dig deep further, to believe there's some alternative motive other than simply protecting the workers of St. Lucia, I have to say to you, is farcical.
Speculation is rife that the Owen King EU hospital is being privatized, with assertions coming from various sources, including former government ministers. Prime Minister Alan Shasley has shed some light on the situation, indicating that the involvement of a third party for the operations of the hospital is indeed in the cards, but would not reveal specifics. This coming a few days after a memorandum of understanding was signed to with the EU, where the Prime Minister indicated that the government has been doing and will continue to do all in its power to have the facility finally opened in its entirety.
We are in advanced discussions with a third party to take on certain responsibilities in the hospital. The first one really is the radiology center. And then we'll be following up with that with hopefully a comprehensive management structure. And then once that's completed, we'll also then include the hospital in the south. But underlining whatever agreements we have is being able to change some of the fundamentals in solution.
Shasley says he anticipates the opening of the Owen King EU by the end of 2018. Privatization of the hospital, according to the Prime Minister, is the preferred route.
We've made that point clear, is that we would prefer to go into a private structure. We've made that point clear, is that we would prefer to go into a private structure.
La, 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 la.
We've made that point clear, is that we would prefer to go into a private structure.
Solutions. The truth is what you believe the truth to be.
So where are we now? Well, you'd think with COVID that these guys would check themselves, but instead with COVID, you've seen the abject greed, misdirection, and nefarious tactics on steroids. So read this along with me and recognize what's happening. When you don't want to say privatize, you say consultancy. When you take a company like Cayman that are not hospital managers, they are hospital operators, profit-driven hospital operators, and you, in fact, let's see the voice. This is from this weekend that passed. Millennium Heights Medical Complex Board announces new Chief Executive Officer and NHL consultancy to help upgrade its operations. NHL. Wow. Who's that? Who's NHL? Narandaya, whatever. Okay, let's go to the next one. The Millennium Heights Medical Complex, which comprises the Owen King European Union Hospital, the National Wellness Center, and Turning Point Rehabilitation Center, has completed the appointment of a senior management team that will be responsible for the operations of the facilities following the transition from the Department of Health and Wellness on April 1st. A transition from the Department of Health and Wellness on April 1st, 2021. Okay, that's the next page. Next page. The Board of Directors of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex is delighted to announce the appointment of the new senior management team headed by Chief Executive Officer Ms. Siobhan James Alexander, who is supported by Dr. Lisa Charles, and Director of Clinical Services, and Mrs. Charmaine Anthony, the Senior Manager for Human Resource. The three remaining members of the senior management team, which includes the Director of Finance and Budget and the Director of Administration, will be on board in April 2021. The team will operate under the direction of the Board of Directors, which comprises of individuals with medical, legal, financial, and human resource expertise. Now, most important part, note well, they still have members of the board that still haven't been appointed, and they'll be appointed by April. The newly appointed senior management team will work collaboratively with the current administration of the complex and international consultants from India to assist in elevating the quality of care for all solutions in keeping with the regional and international standards of best practice. So, if you want to get away from all those euphemized terms and flowery talk, basically, they've put in all the stooges so that Cayman can run roughshod over us, make the changes that they want to make or that were already in play from day one, like what's going down at St. Jude's and what's happening up at OKEU. And that's why Your NIC don't mean nothing when you go up there now. That's why everything you do, they want you to pay up, and you have to pay now and pay first. So whether you like it or not, for those who think in this next election is just voting red or yellow, for those who say, guys, if I give Shasta another chance, you know, right? This is the reality.
The Cayman Group, yes, it's real. It's real. OKU operators out of India will be here. And they will be called consultants. I don't know why we need that. I don't know why we need consultants for OKU. But nobody would leave India and come down here if it's not a profit maximization objective that they are coming to fulfill.
So the phone lines are open, 572-7588, 484-7588. We can talk about this or anything else, and you don't have to believe anything that I've said or anything that I've shown, even if it's staring you in the face like it has been for the last 4.5 years, and then people tell you, oh, that fella's just playing politics. Recognize that Shasney may have obfuscated and misdirected what his motives are. But when you drill down and listen and you see the direction that he and Guy Joseph and others have gone, then you understand exactly what's happening. This government is determined to privatize healthcare, not even having the vaunted health insurance for not even the majority of people. And even with the health insurance, not only was it not for the majority of people, but it was also for a dumbed down list of services that for the average person. But all human beings have average and above average needs. So what happens if the poor person can't afford? Where put you? That's the point. And I want people to understand the implications. So when you go in a voting booth there now, it's not about if Philip Pierre can go on TikTok or whether Sean Edwards can make it clap. You know, it's not about that. It's not about whether Shasney can stay there and buy more bread, or whether he can come down and sound like a Jamaican when he's trying to sound like a St. Lucian. It's not about any of that. It's about you. And if you're thinking about yourself and you've seen somebody who was willing to tell you that he held back on health care, people sleeping on floors, all kinds of horrible health conditions, forced to move in only by COVID, you're going to watch me and tell me because Shasney now goes down to Dennery and does his politics and go with Ferropolius when she's taking an injection, that you're going to forget all how you were treated? But that's exactly what they want. He's in Canaries after curfew buying drinks. Fede, same thing in Ancillary, buying drinks, giving yellow rope to the fishermen after you neglect Ancillary and Canaries for how long? And then you'll vote Sufre that's supposed to have a hospital, Herod doing everything but he not attending to that hospital. They tell you 50 beds. Go there. If you see 20, you see a lot. You see one crib. You'll see underneath there gases, exposed tanks and everything. And nothing for that? St. Lucia, it cannot be about red versus yellow. It has to be about right versus wrong. Because what is happening there right now is happening in slow motion right in front of your face. But the part that nobody's getting in terms of waking up out of the matrix is that it's happening to you. It's happening to me. A vaccine is not going to save us from Shasney's idea of health care, which is to get it off of his books, get it off the P&L of the government, as if the money and the government is his. And he just wants to remove the burden. Because at the end of the day, when he gets sick, he'll fly up to Florida and go to Bishop's Hospital. When he needs to get stuff for his melanoma and stuff like that, he ain't care if y'all. He has millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars to deal with that. But what about you? And when they tell you both parties are the same, here you had a Labour Party that was going toward universal health care. That's a program and a project that any government should be dealing with. Doesn't matter whether it's St. Lucia, anywhere. And instead, Shasney could only come up with a financing mechanism, which is health insurance. St. Lucia, we're going into the weekend. They will try to misdirect you on vaccines. Vaccines deals with an issue. While it is a global pandemic, it is an issue that is a subset of the bigger picture of healthcare. You know what? Here's what I'm asking. Do not take my word for it. Do not trust anything I've said or anything I've seen. Get to any doctor, any nurse, doesn't matter what their politics are, and just ask them if they do not see the moves finalizing and shaping up to privatize healthcare. They won't call it that until the day after election. The same way that they won't say that we are well on our way to becoming a failed state until the day after election. It's up to you. But I'll tell you something, like I've said, it's been going on right underneath your nose. So I'll close and let us go into the weekend on something which I think typifies Guy Joseph, Chasney, and the entire approach of this government. Have a good weekend.
Are we so heartless? It looks like there's a new kind of governance in St. Lucia, man. Heartlessness.
Today they're crying, but you have a lot of crying to do still. You'll have a lot of crying to do. I'm telling you, if that's what you're crying for, you have a lot of crying to do.
There was a workman, and this workman was leaving the factory after a day's work. And he's pushing a wheelbarrow out of the factory. Inside the wheelbarrow, there's a very small package. He's stopped by a security guard. The security guard says, "What have you got in your wheelbarrow?" He says, "Well, I've got a small box." The security guard says, "I can see it's a small box. What have you got in it?" He says, "Well, you know the sawdust that's on the floor at the end of a working day? Well, it's swept up and it's thrown away. Well, I needed some, so I put it in a box and I'm going to take it home." The security guard says, "Open your box." He opens the box, sawdust. He says, "Out you go." Second day, same thing. Third day, same thing. Fourth day, same thing. Fifth day, he's pushing out his wheelbarrow. Inside the wheelbarrow, there's a small box. It's the same security guard. The guard says, "It's you again. What have you got in your wheelbarrow?" He says, "Well, I've got the same as I had the other 4 days, sawdust." The security guard says, "Well, open it." He opens it, it's sawdust. The security guard says, "I've just got this feeling that you're stealing something. I just got that feeling." "Look," he says, "why don't you tell me what you're stealing, and I promise I won't report you." The man says, "All right then, I'm stealing wheelbarrows." You and I, we can be so preoccupied with a small package that we miss the big picture.
The opinions expressed on this TV program by the hosts, co-hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of UTV or its affiliates.